Let's now bring you updates on the Israel-Hamas conflict. The National Education, Health and Allied Workers Union, NEHAU, are protesting at the U.S. consulate in Stanton, Johannesburg, in strong condemnation to the continued violent attacks on Gaza by the Israel military. The union is calling on the continued repression and genocide of innocent Palestinians to stop. Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has arrived in Israel to demonstrate solidarity with Israel. He is set to hold talks with the his Israeli counterpart, Benjamin Netanyahu.
This is not an issue between Muslims and Jews. This is a humanitarian issue. Genocide is taking place right in front of us, and we as South Africans have a duty to the Palestinian people to speak up, as we have experience in the matter of apartheid as well.
What is happening in Gaza is atrocious. I don't even think that there are words to describe it. And when they talk about terrorism, I was called a terrorist when we stood up with the now government, which is the ANC, to overthrow the apartheid regime. So we understand what the Palestinian people are going through right now because we lived it. And I think it's atrocious that fellow South Africans don't stand up to the apartheid and the genocide that is happening in Gaza and in Palestine as we speak. We feel for all human lives that are lost, but we feel for the Palestinian people that have been under this control for 75 years. This is not a 13 days ago story. This is 75 years of absolute oppression, basic human rights that these people didn't have. We know where we come from, and we should stand solidly together as the people of South Africa behind the Palestinians.
The United States has finally released its own assessment of what caused the devastation a day after a deadly blast ravaged Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital in Gaza. According to the Hamas-controlled health ministry in Gaza, hundreds are believed to have been killed in the attack, which has spurred protests across the region. So far, there have been differing assertions on the perpetrator of Tuesday's powerful explosion at Gaza City's Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital. Israel claims a misfire by Islamic Jihad caused the blast, while U.S. President Biden backs this explanation. The National Security Council suggests Israel is not responsible, but Palestinian officials accuse Israel of hitting the hospital amid its ongoing airstrikes in Gaza. Now we're joined by a global affairs analyst, Nweke, to help with the latest on the war between Israel and Hamas. Thank you so much for joining us, Collins.
My pleasure to be with you, Dashen. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, so there have been conflicting reports regarding who was responsible for the deadly explosion that occurred in Gaza City's Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital on Tuesday. Now, what do you make of this, and what are the key factors contributing to the differing assertions about the perpetrators of this hospital attack?
At the heart of the conflicting reports in terms of where the blame should squarely rest are three major factors, if you ask me. Number one is the factor around war not being a clean game. Now, in war, civilians, but also military targets, usually fall. And that is why you have rules of war, of which actors are meant to respect. Now, what we have seen often, particularly in this Israel-Hamas, imbroglio, is the fact that both sides are actually falling short of respecting the rules of war. That's number one. Then, number two, we do know that propaganda is a tool of war. So while Israel is trying to make it look as if Hamas is the one actually bombing a civilian population, Hamas is actually telling the world that, yes, when Israel said that it's going to unleash a siege on, Gaza, that this is actually what they meant by targeting hospitals and the most vulnerable in the society. So you see, it is propaganda going on. And then lastly, I believe that another very important factor to this is, the old wounds that have now continued to fester. You can see that the world is divided somewhere, in the middle. But of course, you do have a gray area of those who do not fall on either side, either supporting Israel or supporting, Palestinians. And so, the blame game simply continues.
All right, Collins, many anticipated that during his travel, the U.S. president would make a strategic conflict de-escalation move when he visited Israel. Now, what implications might arise from Biden's unwavering support for Israel, considering Israel's ongoing war with Hamas, and how would it alter the regional diplomatic landscape?
The expectation is that this unwavering, unshakable support of the United States for Israel does not last too long, because it is actually doing more international damage than it is repairing anything. Now, does it surprise anyone that the United States has decided to stand solidly behind Israel? No, it is at the heart of U.S. Foreign policy. So it would have surprised anyone if, the United States did anything differently. Certainly, in a period of election. Don't forget that Joe Biden is up for re-election in 2024. And so it would have been political suicide for him not to support Israel. Now, those who expected, and that is now coming closer to your specific question, those who expected that, he will adopt a de-escalation strategy, of course, were left very much, disappointed, because the huge expectation was that, yes, it was perhaps normal for him to have supported Israel ab initio, and by doing that, he would have, built up, necessary goodwills, which he can now fall back on and say to Israel, listen, this has gone on for long enough. Let us now begin to de-escalate. Let us begin to contain, this whole thing, so that, it doesn't go out of hand. But he certainly didn't do that. And, overall, I believe that this trip by the U.S. President was up to 80% a failure. Because some of the things, two of the major things he, set out to achieve during the visit, they didn't happen. He couldn't meet with, the leader in the king of Jordan. And so on and so forth.
All right, now still staying on, the cancelled summit in Jordan. Some have actually asserted that Jordan's decision to cancel the summit highlights a complicated relationship with Israel that dates back to the latter state's establishment and still has an impact on regional dynamics. Now, what do you make of all of this?
Yeah, what I make of all of this is that indeed the goals that President Biden set out, when he went for this, visit, which was part of it, of course, a meeting with Jordan King. And the specific aim of that, of course, was to ensure that he gets Jordan's support in ensuring that, the war does not expand to include other regional actors, that, they can count on Jordan's support to ensure that Iran, for instance, does not, join parties with Hamas and all of that. So not being able to have that meeting, we were told that the cancellation was mutual, but we are not all idiots. I think it is very clear that indeed Jordan had to, back out of the meeting because of the unwavering support of the United States for Israel, rather than taking a balanced position. So what would that do? It simply sends a strong signal that America is standing weak on this, is becoming more and more unpopular in its decision to back Israel come what may. And one can hope that at the end of this trip, now that he's gone back to the United States, that they will reassess their position and begin to take a more balanced approach along the line of the humanitarian corridor that indeed he succeeded in establishing. Things along that line will actually help rather than hurt the whole process.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Collins Nweke, for your time and also your view on this particular issue. We really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Dashen.